Hello, everybody. We have a very special guest today, Kenzie Dodds. I'm sure he needs no introduction. And if I go about what all things he has done and all that he works on, I will consume the entire session in introducing him today. So, a quick overview of what he does. So, Kent has been a full time employee of PayPal before. Currently, he is a full time educator and speaker. In fact, he is a very renowned speaker in the React community. He generates content for Agate.io, Frontend Masters, and for his website testingjavascript.com. And recently he launched EpicReact.Dev, something that we are going to talk about today. And he's a very vivid open source contributor. And if you are a React developer, it is highly unlikely that you would not have used one of his NPM packages. So, welcome, Kent, to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
So, how's your day going?
Oh, so far so good. Had a good day getting the kids ready to get to school, and my wife took the dog to the groomers, so she's gonna smell like an old lady for a couple days, but she'll look great. And yeah, and then I just woke up to dozens of emails and messages on Discord and Twitter and stuff that I'm going through,
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to,
yeah.
you know, get on top of it all.
Yeah, especially after, I guess, after the launch of Epic React, it has been a busy day for you for the last couple of days, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I was already busy with open source stuff, but now on top of that, I have Epic React stuff, and the Epic React content is open source as well. And so as people go through the content, they're making contributions to make the content better, or the material better. And so I have my like regular open source stuff, but then also Epic React open source stuff, and then people asking questions about Epic React,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it's a little busy, but it's a good thing, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. So tell us, how do you manage your time? Like with so many things landing up, how do you manage your day?
Yeah, so I guess I've always been a pretty productive person, because years ago, or I people have been asking me this question for a long time, and when I was a full-time employee, it was a big mystery for a lot of people that I was able to get so much done. And as a full-time employee, I actually have a blog post titled "How I'm So Productive." Um, and a lot of people saw me doing like, okay, so you've got a full-time job, but you also have a family, and you have all of this open source stuff that you do, and you have the workshops and podcasts and different things. And then it was kind of like, well, like lots of that is a bit of an illusion of how productive I am, because I'm able to write blog posts on the clock, and prepare workshops, or um, do a little bit of work. I don't prepare brand new workshops on the clock, but if I'm going to give a workshop at PayPal, for my employer, then I can work on that on the clock. And so I was able to do a little bit of double dipping, and I go deeper into that in the blog post. So if anybody who has a job and is like, how can I be more productive with the time that I have on the job, then there's some ideas in there. Of course, you would never want to do any of that stuff without the permission of your employer. But yeah, so now I'm my own employer, and so anytime that I spend is like on my own dime. And that's another thing to keep in mind, is because like the stuff that people see, that is my job. And so I through my whole career, I've tried to optimize for doing things that are public and have a bigger impact. And so like I'm sure that I'm not a whole lot more productive than most people. It's just that the things that I do are much more public and visible, and that's very intentional. I want to be able to make a big impact on the world, and so yeah, how I'm so productive. I guess I don't spend a lot of time doing things that will not push the needle in a in a good positive direction, and the things that I do, I'm very public about. So yeah, those kind of a couple of
Uh,
thoughts.
yeah. Does it ever impact your sleep cycles or your life routines?
Yeah, so I don't really do um I don't know. I guess I would say I work probably 40 hours a week, and then I'm with the family the rest of the time. So I don't think that I work a whole lot more than most people. And sometimes if I do work extra, it's just because I want to, and it's typically on some open source stuff. When I'm recording, things are a little different. When I'm making content, it's difficult to record during the daytime because I have 4 small children who like to play and be kids, and that it's fun, but I can't have that coming into my microphone. So so for recording, I typically do that after the kids go to bed, and I'll record from 7:30 or 8 until 11 or sometimes midnight when I'm doing a lot of recordings. And that for EpicReact, there are over 300 videos. I need to count for sure, but it might be 350. That's a lot, and it took a couple of weeks to get all of those recorded kind of on that schedule. So outside of that, though, I don't really do a whole lot of work in the evenings or anything. It's pretty typical normal workday.
The Epic React videos are really good. The spacecraft theme that you created around it looks really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I got a shirt.
Oh wow.
So I now have an Epic.
Yeah.
My kids love this, so that works out.
So do you ever face burnout with so many things to do and with the expectations from the community?
Yeah, I've run into a couple of things throughout my career. Sometimes where I probably pushed a little too hard. Years ago, I was working on some open source stuff, and I worked on something that I just was really into and really excited about. Nobody was asking for it, but I thought it was an interesting thing, and so I was working late into the night, and I kept on telling my wife, "Oh, I'll be up soon," or whatever. That didn't work out very nicely because she was waiting for me, and so I kept her up really late, and she was not happy with me, and that was when I realized that I need to be more responsible with the way that I treat open source and just the commitments that I make. And just this morning I was writing in my journal thinking about how I think I overcommit myself. And I expect more of myself than I should, and that does stress me out a fair amount. And so, in general, the logical thought process that I go through is I just need to commit to fewer things and expect less of myself. Or expect longer timelines, I guess, in general. So yeah, I think in general, I manage burnout pretty well. And in particular with open source, where burnout is a hot topic, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, open source developers are burning out all the time. I actually don't face that a whole lot myself because I've developed this attitude of, if I want to do it just for the fun of it, then I'll do it. Or if I need to do it for my job, then I'll do it. But if it's if somebody files an issue, that is their issue. It's not my issue. And unless I'm experiencing the same problem they are, I'm not going to do anything about that. And in fact, I often won't even respond if I don't have the time to do it. And I've learned to be okay with that. It does kind of feel and seem a little bit heartless, but it's it's either that or just don't work on open source. And so I'm happy to say, you can manage, and if it's really important to your job, then you can go and fix that. And I'll do my best to review pull requests and stuff. But yeah, so I feel like I've been able to separate myself emotionally from my open source stuff, and that's helped me avoid burnout.
Yeah, especially for open source maintainers, it's a very hectic thing. Like since Frontend Social is an open source project and a lot of developers, they contribute to it. But recently, because of the Hackerfest thing, there were like so many spam PRs and that just came in. And I was thinking, how do we handle, these things?
I kind of Okay, so years back, I was super into getting people into open source, and I still am. I think it's really important. It's been a huge boon for my career. It's been awesome. But in recent years, I've just not been able to commit to helping onboard people into open source like I have in the past. And so each October, I kind of look forward to Hacktoberfest with a little bit of trepidation. Like I don't really look forward to it anymore because it is a burden, and it's mostly because of the spam pull requests. I don't mind people making good faith, contributions, and I enjoy those, but it's the spam things. And unfortunately, this year, somebody with a huge following shared how to make a pull request really easily. It was just kind of trying to show it, in a legitimate way, like, hey, go make a legitimate pull request. I'm going to show you a really useless pull request as an example. But a lot of their following, like, I think he had 600,000 YouTube subscribers. And so, a lot of his following just decided, okay, I'll just go make a bunch of useless pull requests and get a free shirt. And so, that was really unfortunate.
I got a lot of such PRs where people just change the README file and added, this is an option project. I was like, what?
Yeah. That's exactly, I think that was what he did in his video, and people just took that as a template and applied it everywhere. So I got dozens of pull requests like that. And I just made a little snippet that made it look like a robot was closing things. And I just said, this looks like Hacktoberfest spam, or comment if you think that's wrong. And then I label it as invalid. But like, it's really unfortunate because the burden has been placed on the open source maintainer who is already overburdened, like yourself. And so I know that the Hacktoberfest folks have changed the rules, and now it's an opt-in thing, which is also a shame because now so few projects will opt in that the few that do will just get overrun by contributions, and they'll probably get burned out there. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to Oktoberfest, but yeah, there's a challenge for maintainers in helping to support the broader community in that way.
Yeah, I think it's part of the game. So, so tell us about your front-end career. Like, how did you decide to become a front-end developer? Because a lot of developers were looking at back-end development as a lucrative career. So how did you get into this field?
So I've actually written at length my last or my experience getting into the industry. I wrote a blog post called Decade in Review. It's a 2010 Decade in Review that people can find on my blog. And it's actually, pretty in-depth experience because my whole getting into the industry was all in the 2010s. And so you can read from me pretty much starting in college and getting into the industry. Basically, the short story is I wasn't convinced that I wanted to be a software engineer, but every job that I took, I found myself moving closer and closer to spending more of my time developing software to automate my job. And so it started with Java. I built some Java programs to automate some of my work. And then I was introduced to JavaScript, and everything changed for me. I was just way happier working in the front end. Not necessarily design. I don't really do design. I can't make things look good, but I can make an experience a positive one, like a good experience in the UI. I really like the UI. I think it's very interesting and challenging domain. And so, when I got into JavaScript, it just felt so right for me. And then I, fell into AngularJS. I was a big part of that community for a long time, and then switched over to React, and just been super happy with React ever since.
Yeah. So you stuck to React ever since then, right? So how do you find React going forward? Like, how is the roadmap of React going forward?
Yeah, so React, I'm very positive about React's future, and I'm not just saying that because I've kind of hitched my wagon to their to their future, but I've hitched my wagon to them because I'm positive about their future. And so there are a couple of things that are really positive signals to me about React. And actually, I'll mention the one thing that I'm not super excited about React first, and then I'll say the things I am excited about. The thing that I'm least excited about React is that it's built by Facebook and maintained by Facebook, owned by Facebook. And I'm not a big fan of Facebook as a company. I think they're pretty shady as a company. And it makes me uncomfortable that React is owned by that company. That aside, Facebook is an enormous company with enormous scaling problems, and on top of that, they also have thousands of internal developer tools that are all built with React. And so what's cool about that is React is going through just this enormous battle testing ground of, we need to make sure that this thing can handle the load and the size of Facebook.com. But we also want to make sure that it's suitable for the small projects that we build internally. And in my experience, I've had great success using React for both the really small things that I do as well as the enormous things that I do. And so that's really nice for me. So the Facebook thing is kind of a double-edged sword. As far as the future of React, I see some really cool things coming up with the React suspense and concurrent mode, where we can just take performance to the next level, that user experience to the next level, regardless of how complicated our applications get. I love that React is basically the solution for building UIs anywhere. So we've had React Native for a long time. We have React VR. We have React 3 Fiber, so you can do 3D with React. You can, anywhere there's UI, you can use React to solve that UI problem. And I don't see, like, there are other frameworks that are out there, but none of them are different enough from React to really topple React over. The next big thing, whatever that big thing could be, is going to be so different from anything else that we have that it'll just be like a quantum leap away from React. And part of the reason for that, and this is why I say it's likely that React is going to be the last UI framework you ever need to learn, because React is constantly evolving to meet the needs that we have, and as it gets into these new interfaces. And so for the last several years, React has constantly been evolving to make that possible, which is, I think, really a wonderful sign. So yeah, so I think React will continue to evolve until it just really is such a totally different game that nothing like React could ever make sense. And who knows what that would be. If you listening right now have an idea, like, go and make it happen, because it's going to be big if it ever does. So yeah, there's the declarative asynchrony with React Suspense. We've got evolution of the way that UIs are presented, the different platforms for UIs that are a cool future, and honestly a present for React. And the community just keeps getting bigger, and that carries along with it a whole lot of awesome side effects as well.
Yeah, the kind of innovation that we see in React isn't there so much in other frameworks. Like, there isn't much happening on the Angular side, and Vue pretty much takes a lot from the innovations in React. So React really, as a community, is leaning forward. In fact, one thing you really pointed out well, when Angular came, Google did not use Angular in their projects that much. But when React came, Facebook totally adopted it. So that really made a difference in having that kind of a confidence on a framework. Yeah, maybe Svelte is something that I see as, although it's experimental, but it challenges the way we look at UI frameworks today.
Yeah, I think Svelte is an interesting one. It still isn't different enough from React that I think that it's going to gain a huge amount of traction, but like, maybe I'll eat my words in the future. But I just don't see it being different enough to justify an entire community of people leaving. And it's difficult to measure the popularity of a framework, but I think the best metric that I can think of is the amount of dev tools installs from like the Chrome or Firefox dev tools. And React is twice the number of dev tools installs as the next closest framework. So Vue is at 1 million, and React is at 2 million, and that's like plus, so somewhere in that range. And then I think Svelte was down in the like tens of thousands. So it is cool, it's interesting, but it's very niche. And I see it as something that will remain that way for its lifetime. Eventually, I foresee that React will continue to evolve and maybe adopt some of the interesting ideas that Svelte presents and provides. But yeah, React, I think, will reign as king for as long as we have UI frameworks that are like it. The next thing is going to be very different, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about the EpicReact.Dev. So how did you come up with this initiative, and did you already have this in mind for a while, and what is it?
Yeah, I've been working on EpicReact.Dev for years. Really, it's hard to really quantify this kind of work because it's something that, like the workshop material that is present in EpicReact is something that I've been evolving since like 2015 or 2016 when I gave my first React workshop. And so you know, initially I just had the one React workshop, and then I added enough content to split it into two, and then more content and more, and eventually I had 11 workshops. And that's what Epic React is. If you look on the website, you'll see that there are only 8 listed, but that's because the last one is we're going to build a whole Epic React workshop or Epic React app. And that's actually 4 workshops when I give them live. So we have 11 workshops of just tons and tons of concepts and ideas. And I've been working on this stuff for years. So as far as like how long have I actually been working on EpicReact.Dev itself, I started work on it at the beginning of this year, 2020. And that's when I actually started recording videos and stuff. But like every time that I have given a workshop that's helped me solidify the material and improve it and make it better. And once I had all of this material solid and I knew that it was good, then I knew that I could continue just giving these workshops and, you know, get a couple dozen people every time and charge them $600 a ticket for one workshop. Or I could get this recorded and have it such high fidelity that's basically like an in-person workshop. And then I could, because of that scale, I could pass the cost savings on to the customer. And so now the full price of EpicReact.Dev Pro is equal to, and that's 11 workshops, is equal to the ticket for one workshop. And so I've been able to just increase the impact just a huge amount. So anyway, yeah, I've been working on this for a really, really long time, and I'm super happy it's finally out.
Yeah. Oh yes. For those who have gone through your review videos, those look really cool, and especially the material. It goes really deep into what React is about. So it's like totally recommended to anybody building a career in React. So
Yeah,
how does it care of the shortcomings? For example, if I am in a workshop live with you, like in person, I can ask questions to you and get things clarified. And I believe a lot of people will have that problem, right? Whenever I go through any video tutorial or courses, and if I'm stuck, I have to do a Google search and things like that. So, is there a way for participants to connect with you if they have a problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple of cool things about this, because I know that like you grab a Udemy course and you have 40 hours of content to go watch, and just like in your basement by yourself. That's basically what that is. So this is very different. So first of all, it's a very interactive workshop. And so like you're going to be spending more of your time with your fingers on the keyboard than you will be watching my video. So it's not something you just throw up on the Apple TV or Chromecast or something and just consume it all and think that you're learning something. And so, yeah, if you do end up getting stuck somewhere, then there are several solutions available to you. First off, I would say I've given these workshops so many times that I know most of the questions that people are going to ask, and I answer those in the videos, as just in the way that I present it, as well as like the extra things that I say, oh, and by the way, this or whatever. So most of the common questions will just naturally be answered in the course of watching the video after you've gone through it yourself. And then for anything else, I also have documentation for each one of the exercises that say, here's some background information, here's some links to, to resources that you can go learn more about this. And so that I can add things to that if I find people are asking the same questions that maybe I didn't cover, or I didn't cover well enough or something. There was just a little confusion. I can add things to that. And so I've done a lot of things to preemptively help people avoid asking those types of questions. Just because, not because I don't want them asking questions, but because if you have a question, then it wasn't answered in the material, and I'd like to get that answered preemptively so you can save time. And then for the things that do slip in or slip through, then we have a couple of other resources. So every week I have what's called office hours. So twice a week, I'll have 1 hour of my time dedicated to answering people's questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about my material. They can ask career advice, or they can ask about JavaScript syntax, or whatever, really anything. And you can share your screen with me, and we can pair on stuff and whatever. So yeah, this is just a Zoom call. It's streamed to YouTube for to save it forever. And so yeah, if somebody runs into a problem, they can ask me during office hours. But the other cool thing is we have a Discord that has I haven't checked, but there are like 6,000 people in there, and they're all active. I actually have an onboarding process to make sure that people who are joining are actually going to be active on the community. So this isn't like your Discord that has 20,000 people and only 500 are active. We have most people are active in this community. That doesn't say that we don't allow lurkers. Like, people are totally fine to come in and just lurk. That's cool. But like, it's a very active Discord community. And so you can ask a question, you will likely get an answer to your question. And then I'm moderating that, or looking through that as well. And so I can help answer questions there. And then for most people, I recommend they actually take advantage of the KCD learning clubs, which people can learn about at kensidodds.com/clubs. But basically, a learning club is a group of people who want to learn the same thing, go through the same curriculum, like EpicReact. And so they have a schedule that they follow, and they go through it together. So they get a little group. It's a Discord group DM that can have up to 10 people in it. And you can do video chat, and you can do regular chat, and you get to know each other, and you learn it together. And this is a very effective means for learning and retaining the things that you've learned. And so I in the KCD Discord, I facilitate putting these groups together. So if you don't have 10 friends who want to learn this stuff, then I facilitate putting you together with other people in your time zone, or in a, who can meet at the same time that you can. And we've got probably a dozen or more groups like that going right now. And so we've got plenty of things. This isn't just something you're going to go through by yourself. Plenty of opportunity to get help from other people.
Yeah. And is Epic React just for those who are already aware of React and want to take it to the next level? Or is it for those who are even new to JavaScript?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Epic React is for everyone, everybody who wants to learn React. We do have the assumption that you have experience with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you don't have that experience, then I have a blog post that it's entitled "The JavaScript You Should Know for React." And if you're comfortable with the syntax that's in there, then you are ready to go through Epic React. If you're not, then it might not be like you can get a license, but wait until you feel comfortable with JavaScript before you go through it. Because otherwise, you can go through it, that's fine, but you'll probably struggle a little bit if you don't have that experience. But you need zero knowledge to get started with this. And if you have like even more experience than me, if you've been using React for 6 years, I've had people using React longer than I have who take the first workshop that's React fundamentals, and they say that they're blown away by how much they learn. So this is, and that's the like fundamental stuff. We also have advanced React hooks, advanced React patterns, React performance, React suspense. There's something for everybody in this. If you want to learn anything about React, whether you've been using it for 6 years or if you never even heard of it and you just want to build UIs, Epic React is big enough for everybody.
Great, yeah. So for somebody who's new to the field, what do you recommend to them? Like, how do they start their career path in front-end development or React especially? Like, what all things should they keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you have decided that UI is where you want to focus, and it's a great place to focus, I'll mention also that for me, when I got started, I made the conscious decision that I would be all in on JavaScript, and I just do everything front end. I do plenty of back end stuff too, and like tooling and stuff with Node, but I am all in on JavaScript, and that has paid off super well for me. The JavaScript will not be toppled, period. The JavaScript is actually very much like React, where the next thing that will topple JavaScript will be so different from what JavaScript is and what everything else is that it will be just a quantum leap forward. And this is likely to be like AI is writing all the software or something like it. JavaScript is a very good language for your job security. So anyway, yeah, focusing on front end is a great choice. And the way that I would structure that is, if you want to get into React, which is also a really great choice, then I recommend building stuff. I actually have this talk called Consume, Build, and Teach, which is going to be, I'm giving for React Summit next week. It's the Amsterdam conference. Yeah. Well, everything's online now, but yeah, so I talk about this. I actually also have, it's based on a talk that I gave years ago called 0 to 60 in Software Development, How to Jumpstart Your Career. So if anybody wants to look that up, that's kind of outlines the way that I see things. But the idea is you want to consume as much information as you can, just from a high level perspective. And then you choose the things that you want to focus on and you dive deep into those by building things. And then you teach the things that you've learned. So you write a blog post or you record a screencast or give a talk or whatever. And that's the process that has led me to learn and be able to build the cool things that I've built. So yeah, I like try to focus on actually building things and delivering value. And then if ever you want to level up on whatever you're doing, then just dive deep into the fundamentals. So yeah. I know there are a lot of people who say, you can't be a real developer if you don't know the fundamentals. I think that's bogus. And like, you can't be a real developer if you like don't actually build and ship stuff. Like anybody can be a real developer. So try to build and ship things. And then once you want to level up on whatever tools you're using, then you can go into the fundamentals. Now, it'd be really awesome if you can kind of do both at the same time, where you're both learning how to build and ship stuff and also learning the fundamentals at the same time. And that's what EpicReact.Dev does for you. Is it you're not going to be able to build anything until you read some documentation about it. And so if you learn in the right with the right materials, then you will actually both learn how to ship something as well as learn the fundamentals at the same time. And that's what EpicReact is all about. And so if you really want to dive into React, then EpicReact.Dev is seriously the best place that I can think to send people. And that's not just because I made it, but it's I agree with it because I made it, I guess. I don't know. It's good. It's really good and people love it. So yeah, definitely build stuff and level up by diving into fundamentals, and there's no shortcut to experience either. You just need to put in the time, and you get experience by having experiences. And so you need to find ways to force yourself into different situations where you'll have new and varied experiences.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, especially about leveling up your fundamentals. Because I see a lot of developers who start their career in this field, but because they have not, they're not well versed with a lot of things and why certain things are done in a certain way, they will just copy paste code from, let's say, Stack Overflow into their project, and it just works and they're fine with it. And then they don't go deep into why things are working, and this becomes a source of bug for a lot of bugs later on because they didn't know why it's working. For example, why do they really need to have a key in the list of items in React? If the list doesn't work, they just search it on Google and they just find out the first answer in Stack Overflow, copy paste the code, and that's it. But knowing why to put a key that would really help them to get smarter at code and actually actually debug the code smarter at a later point on
So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that example, because that's the last exercise of the React Fundamentals workshop, and of all of the things in the Fundamentals workshop, that's one of the most common mind-blown experiences that people tell me about. Is they're just like, "Wow, that exercise just blew my mind. I finally understand what the key is all about."
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and given your experience of conducting so many workshops all around the world, now I'm pretty sure that that has all kind of in condensed form in this Epic React course, and there is a lot for people to take
Yeah,
from there.
absolutely. And that's really important to me too. Is I know that we think that money is really valuable, but what's more valuable than money is our time. And so I can appreciate that people are paying money, and you know, on Epic React we support purchase power parity. And so if like you're coming from a country that's doesn't have as much purchasing power as the US dollar, then you get a very significant discount. Um, but even then, the bigger investment that you're making is the time that you commit to going through this material, and that is not lost on me. And so you'll find that this is the fastest way for you to level up your React experience, and also be able to actually remember the things that you're learning.
Yes, yeah. That's a really very good point that you brought up, because there are a lot of countries where people want to learn things, but the cost factor for learning courses or even attending conferences are so high that they cannot really get connected with the community. Although, if you ask my frank opinion, I do not think the cost of material that you are providing is that high if somebody is looking at building a career in React. So that's a very good investment. But still, there are a lot of individuals, especially if your company is not sponsoring you and you're doing it from your own pocket, then yeah, it really helps. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of people see Epic React and they say, "Wow, that's very expensive," and some people will say it's overpriced, and it is very expensive, but it's not overpriced. I think lots of people compare Epic React to a Udemy course that's on sale for $10 perpetually, and that is a very incorrect comparison, because a Udemy course can provide you a couple of bits of useful information for sure. But Epic React is more akin to like a coding school or a boot camp. It's like it is so much more stuff than anything else that you'll find on these other learning platforms. And so when people see this and they're like, "Wow, that's like 2 months rent," it's like, yeah, so would a semester of college would also be a lot more than that. And so like that's what you should be comparing this to. It's not just a thing that you do over a weekend. This is a multi-week experience similar to a coding school.
Yeah. Do you think it's a replacement for computer science degree as well? Like, is computer science degree really relevant in our field, or like should people just focus on learning courses and they are good for the job?
Yeah, so I can say I have a master's degree in information systems, and so it's like that. There's that. It's I kind of feel like I would have been just fine without that, and I could have used the 4 years that I spent, or 5 years that I spent going through school, just developing my skills on my own, and I would have been just fine, and maybe even better off. It's hard to tell. I certainly learned things during my time at school, but most of the like practical on the job things that I actually learned outside of school with extra side projects I was doing, which is a little frustrating because I paid good money for that. I met my wife, and so you know, if I hadn't gone to school, I wouldn't have met her, so it was worth it. But yeah, so I wouldn't say that Epic React by itself is a replacement for a CS degree. It's not going to look as good on a resume as you know, accredited university would. But we do give certificates, and so you can show evidence of your completion of the workshops and things. It's not going to teach you JavaScript, so you would need to learn that on your own. As far as like whether you need a CS degree or not, when I was hiring at PayPal, I actually didn't really care too much about seeing a CS degree on there. I actually interviewed more bootcamp grads than I did university grads, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And in fact, I interviewed one person who had a PhD, and that made me raise my eyebrows more than, because I was like, wow, what do they want to do with a PhD at PayPal? Like, but I mean, there are plenty of really smart people at PayPal, and he actually went on to do some pretty amazing things at PayPal. So yeah, like, I don't know, I never really put much stock into that, but the issue isn't me and my opinions, it's your employer and the person that you want to hire you. And I think that for a lot of companies, a CS degree is still pretty important. But I think it's becoming increasingly less so, or decreasingly so, that it's important.
Yeah, I remember I did my engineering in information technology, and the first year was kind of common to all fields of engineering. So we were taught civil engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering. And today, when I think about it, like spending one full year was kind of a waste of time. I could have done something better for my
Yeah.
career. So coming into the next thing, you have done so much in making people test aware, making sure that their software is well tested. In fact, you have a dedicated website for that, testingjavascript.com. So the React testing library that you created that got so much of attention from the community. Tell us how did you start working on React testing library, and what were the loopholes you found in the existing solution, and what motivated you?
So testingjavascript.com kind of came in a very similar way to EpicReact, where I had a bunch of workshop material and I wanted to create some courses, and I'd never done anything like this before with testingjavascript.com. So my plan originally was to take these workshops and make egghead courses out of these. And so I approached Egghead and I said, hey, I think I've got like 6 or 7 different courses that I want to get on Egghead. And they said, now hold up, maybe we can do something special. And that's where testing JavaScript came from. And it's very similar to EpicReact in some ways. It's more of it's not workshop based, with the exception of the testing node applications. Testing node, the testing node module is actually very similar to EpicReact in the way that it's structured, but the others are just like Egghead courses. You just watch the videos. Yeah, so as I was preparing the material for all of the workshops that I was giving, this was before I even thought about testingjavascript.com. I was like, I'd actually taught people testing and testing React. I showed them testing React with Ava and testing React with Mocha and with Jest. It evolved on this material, and I had Enzyme for that whole time. And I was getting ready to give a big workshop at Trulia, and in the process of working through this, one of the things that I like to do is, when I introduce a new concept, if it's a fundamental, like really important concept that I want people to not miss, then I want to implement the abstraction first. As part of the exercise, we implement it together and then add the abstraction later so that you understand what the abstraction does. And you'll find that I do this a lot in my material for the like really important fundamental concepts, like React.createElement, and then we bring in JSX. So things that are really important, I like to do that. And Enzyme I felt like was really important. And so we started with React DOM. And so we'd say React DOM.render, we'll render this to a DOM node. And now let's move from that to Enzyme. And that jump from just regular React DOM.render to Enzyme was just such a huge leap. And I thought, well, there's got to be something in the middle. And so I started building out a little bit of an abstraction of my own on top of React DOM.render. And then I realized when I was finished that I didn't need Enzyme. Enzyme was too big of an abstraction for what I wanted. I was never really happy with Enzyme because there was this, I was actually planning on making a list of all of the things in Enzyme you should not use, like shallow rendering and find by the component name or find by the component itself. Like a big list of things that Enzyme supports that you should never use. And so as I was building out my own little abstraction, I realized that, hey, this would be really cool if I just make my own thing that doesn't allow them to do all those things that I say they shouldn't do. And then we just go with that and we just ignore Enzyme altogether. And so I built a React testing library in a couple of days. And then I switched my whole workshop to use this little abstraction that I just published to NPM. And like 2 weeks later, I was over there teaching them about this brand new library that I made. You know, they paid me good money to teach them about this brand new library. And I was like, please, I hope this takes off or something, you know, so that they aren't mad at me for not teaching them enzyme. And that's where React Testing Library came from. And eventually I realized that most of React Testing Library was not specific to React at all. And so I extracted the core of that. Now that's DOM Testing Library, and we just have a wrapper for React, and we have one for Vue and Angular and all, like every framework and every tool. We have Cypress and Test Cafe and Puppeteer and everything that can use this, so that we can write tests that are can give us a lot more confidence than with anything else.
Yeah, I really like that shift in paradigm of thinking from the user endpoint rather than how the application looks like. So that makes the test much more relevant. In fact, a lot of people do not write tests for these reasons. Like, they think it's a waste of time maintaining such kind of test. In fact, if the tests are relevant, they will definitely like to write test. What's your take on people's opinion when they say that writing test is a waste of time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I see writing tests as on the same level as anything else you can do with your time, right? And so it's just software that you can write. So we write software to automate our deploy pipeline, right? So that we can deploy easier. We write software, like software in general is just the ability to automate processes, whether that process is consuming information from the TV screen, like a movie or something, or like doing something productive with our time, a to-do list or whatever. It's all just automating processes to make us more productive. And I see writing tests as exactly the same. And so not all software is as effective as others at doing that automation, right? So like you can have an app that you install on your phone and you find out that it's not doing the job that it was intended to do, so you want to install it. And so it was unsuccessful at serving you. And I think that you can write tests that are similarly unsuccessful at serving you in automating the process that you're trying to automate, right? So it comes down to how important is it for you that you don't ship a bug to production. And if it's really important to you, then you're going to do things to make sure that you don't ship a bug to production. So that might be really intense code reviews. It could be a day of testing, in staging before you ship to production. Whatever makes you feel safe to actually ship to production. And if there's something that you can do to automate that, then I say, why not? The challenge becomes, how do I automate that in a way that it actually serves its purpose? Like, how do I make sure that it's actually useful automation? And that's what I teach in testingjavascript.com, is how to write tests that will provide you actual value. And a lot of my blog, I have dozens of posts on my blog about how to write tests that will serve you, so that you don't have to serve the test. Because I know a lot of people end up babysitting the test, and that can be really frustrating. And I totally appreciate that, which is why I spend so much time helping people avoid that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so good to have this conversation with you, and I would have loved this conversation to go on and on. There is so much thing to learn from you, but unfortunately we are bound by time, so we would wrap it up at this. Maybe one final question. What is it that you do not like about JavaScript, and something that you would want that to be fixed? You have been an active member of TC39, right? So what's your take on that?
Oh my goodness. So I can tell you one big thing that I really wish would change about JavaScript. That'll never happen. But modules. So, how the syntax is import, foo from bar, whatever. I don't like that. I would much rather it say from bar import foo. And the reason why is because as you're typing it out, your editor can give you much more useful information if it knows which module you're trying to import stuff from first. Right. And so then you could say from bar import, and then it'll show you, here are the things that you can import from this module. That would be nice. I would love that, but like that'll never happen. So yeah, that's one thing, I guess. The other thing it's really unfortunate, again, on modules, it's really unfortunate how long it's taken for modules to actually be useful. Everybody's compiling modules. There are very few people who are successfully shipping modules to the browser, and then using modules in Node, like ES modules. And the interoperability story there is just a real big challenge. So I wish that modules had been something that were introduced in ES5, and so that we wouldn't have this compatibility issue now that we do today. So that's a pretty big problem. And then one other thing that I'll mention that's kind of tied to React as well. I'm really looking forward to a framework called Remix Run. If you go to remix.run, it'll take you to this. But that is something that I'm looking forward to, that will solve a bunch of, I think will solve a lot of problems that I have with the React ecosystem. And I know that we're limited on time, so I'll just leave it at that. But if anybody's interested, go take a look at Remix Run. It's very impressive.
Wow, that's a great point to end this conversation. It was absolutely my pleasure to have this conversation with you, and wish you all the best with the launch of EpicReact.Dev, and let's see how it goes. And thank you so much for being on this show.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.